Everyone, by the way, this is Darren Blomquist who works for auction.com. He's the head economist. You also write for HousingWire, correct?
Yeah, we do have contributed articles for
Yep.
HousingWire. Yep. And so here's the pre-foreclosure data. But now basically in the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen that turn a corner. And so there's these folks who are coming to auction actually have less, it's trending to have less equity, which means there's less opportunity for them to avoid foreclosure, and less motivation.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing, corresponding to that, a higher rate of scheduled auctions converting to completed auctions. And
Hmm.
that's really just in the last 6 to 8 months. But I do think that's probably that universe you're talking about, Jake, with the recent vintage loans.
Yeah.
Anyway, the pre-foreclosures, if you look at REO sales, foreclosures, auction sales, and then pre-foreclosure sales, this is public record data from Adam. Those pre-foreclosure sales are making up 56% of all those distressed sales. We're back in 2019, they were making up 37%. So the mix has shifted where more of those are selling upfront pre-foreclosure.
But if you add in a 2025 bar, you're saying the green section would grow on the right chart. It sounds like
It would start growing a little bit, yeah. You'd still see, I think we're on track for still over 50% in the
Okay.
pre-foreclosure column, but you do start to see the green, and even a little bit to the extent the blue column would be higher.
And that makes sense with all the equity people have gotten in their homes over the past, decade, call it, that pre-foreclosure sale would still be a pretty high number because there is still equity for some people, unless you bought recently.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So there's kind of a have and have not
Yeah.
scenario depending on when you bought.
Yeah.
And if it's the FHA, we're seeing the particularly problematic with FHA and VA, where they do have those low down payments, and so they're less likely to have equity in the home. Our foreclosure auction volume was up in the third quarter across all different loan types, but it's up. Well, VA was a little bit of an anomaly, up by a huge percentage because of a moratorium last year. But then also VA, we're seeing, FHA up, and FHA is kind of a disproportionate. They make up about 30 to 33% of all of our foreclosure auction volume, which is, disproportionate given that they're about maybe 15% of all mortgage originations.
They're your highest risk, unfortunately. Yeah, buyers.
Yep. So, and we are seeing, go back here a little bit to some of our data. I showed this before, but we did see foreclosure auctions up 31% in the third quarter from a year ago. The blue bars represent buyers like yourselves. Even though it says 120%, we're seeing demand is the 120% is benchmarking it back to pre-pandemic levels. So there's still a lot more demand than there used to be. In terms, we just measure that by sales rate, the percentage of properties that sell. But it's coming down. It's trending downward as the market slows. There's less demand. And then on the right-hand side, just looking out going forward, when we look at our scheduled auctions data, for at least the next 2 quarters, the fourth quarter here, and even into the first quarter of next year, those scheduled auction volume is on track to be up by double digits from a year ago. So that would indicate continued increases in volume at the auctions. That makes sense.
All right. So if I'm reading that right chart correctly, 2Q25, the blue bar, your scheduled auctions are 12% higher than 2Q24. It's a quarter.
Right.
Okay.
And then I put it in there also. So our scheduled auction said there was going to be a 12% increase. There was actually a 19% increase in the second quarter in completed auctions.
Okay.
And that speaks to the fact that what I mentioned earlier, more of the scheduled auctions, a higher percentage of the scheduled auctions are actually going through and happening rather than being canceled or postponed. So that's accounts for that difference in rate.
It's good for
Gotcha.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, more volume. Um, and then we are seeing this I think is good for you too. This demand at foreclosure auction coming down a little bit, meaning
Yeah.
fewer are selling at auction, which means more are going to end up as REO auctions. More of those foreclosure auctions.
Those numbers were starting to get out of hand for a while. Like, just because there was such a lack of inventory out there in the market, people were going to these foreclosure auctions more often and paying a higher number for a lot of these
Yeah.
things. Now they're realizing that, things are settling down. They're backing off a bit.
Yep. That's I mean, it was almost unbelievable even to us, the percentage of the sales rate that we were seeing and then what people were willing to pay at foreclosure auction. I mean, I think the retail market warranted it, but that's normalizing a bit at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah. So, I skipped around a little bit. We can go back
Right.
to any questions or anything you want to focus in on.
I mean, these numbers are kind of coming in line with everything we're seeing too out there in the market. And HUD Home Store is a good barometer too. So we see a lot of that stuff. And Mike and Jake were talking about where some of the properties we were getting were built in like 2020 or 2021. And we're getting them on HUD Home Store. These were FHA mortgages, obviously, or VA or US. I guess only those two, VA or FHA. But yeah,
Yeah, that's where we're seeing the increases. If we look at the numbers by state, the
Yeah, I
left-hand
was actually
map
going to ask
here.
that next
Okay. The
because
left
state
hand is
is,
just year-over-year
yeah,
change in foreclosure auction volume. The right hand is benchmarking it. Like I just always want to benchmark that pre-pandemic because we've been in such a weird period over the last 5 years. But yeah, you see Texas stands out to me, a 66% increase year over year in these foreclosure auctions. Arizona, 46% increase. Some of these states up here have, Wyoming and Nebraska are smaller volume,
hmm
but pretty big increases there.
West
And
Virginia. Hmm.
yeah,
Darren,
38
is this
states. It's
just
pretty
for
consistent.
auction.com data or is this for like the universe?
This is auction.com. That's a good
Okay.
question. I'm going back and forth a little bit, but
yeah,
this is
Yeah,
our
I'm just trying to
data.
level set. Some charts are everything,
Yeah.
some charts are your company specific. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
just to provide context, we're estimating using public record data, we're about 40 to 50% of the market, total market,
Okay.
with
okay.
specifically with the foreclosure auctions. So, yeah, but I
Texas
mean,
knows about.
Florida is very interesting to me because we see delinquencies coming up in Florida,
Hmm.
but the foreclosure auctions are still down 2% year over year.
Yeah.
I would expect to see that shift. But I think a couple things are happening. You have the higher delay or the um, the longer foreclosure process, the judicial foreclosure process in Florida, things take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the other thing, I think someone brought this up. I hadn't thought about this, but because of some of the hurricanes last year, there were some extra delays added even on top of the normal foreclosure process there that may have held back some of the foreclosure inventory.
Yeah, that's very likely because there was two that went through last year and like within a week.
Yeah.
So they probably did delay a bit of that
So I'd expect to see that flip
increase
because
there. Yeah.
delinquencies there have been up and it's got some of the other pressures homeowners are feeling are um, insurance costs is one of the big ones, and that's
Yeah.
been an issue in Florida. Um, and so I'd expect to see those come up. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty widespread. But Texas is a really interesting one to me, where we're seeing a lot of increases, even Georgia there,
Yeah.
with Georgia and
Yeah.
Alabama and Mississippi, all with some pretty big increases. And those tend to be a little bit higher volume states.
Hmm.
So that's significant there.
Is that
Yeah. We're
Vermont
seeing,
133%?
Uh, Yeah, I think so. And that's I don't, I would downplay that a little bit just because of the law of low numbers there. There's not
Yeah.
a huge amount of volume, but there was a big percentage increase.
There was and I think the reason this happened there when